Tonight we trace two sisters through frost and sunlight, from secret childhood doors to wide-open gates, from fear to love, from a blizzard of loneliness to a bridge between worlds. Breathe slow. The snow will fall softly. The story will warm slowly, and in the end they choose each other. Chapter 1. Childhood in Arendelle. Closed gates, quiet hearts. In the beginning there is laughter in the dark. A little girl in nightclothes skids across polished floors, scattering moonlit dust like snow. Another girl, older by a beat of time, cups her hands and spins pale flakes from thin air. The palace is a secret playground, marble and velvet and echo, and the sisters are the only two who know how to turn it into dawn. Elsa's gift is a miracle wrapped in a mystery, and when she is small, it feels only like joy. Ice unfurls under her feet like silver ribbon. Snowbursts pop like flowers in fast forward. She makes staircases that vanish with a breath. Anna is the audience of one and the partner in everything. Clapping, leaping, never doubting that magic and love are twin names for the same light. But childhood is a tightrope. One night becomes a line drawn through all nights. A slip, a strike of cold to Anna's head. A frightened cry that hangs in the corridor and makes the portraits look away. The king and queen rush to a hidden valley of stone and moss, where trolls carry wisdom like lanterns. Memory is shifted. Danger is named. The words are gentle, but the meaning is hard. Fear can close a door that love opened. Back in Arendelle, the gates slide shut on their hinges, heavy as winter. Elsa is taught to pull on gloves the way sailors tie knots before a storm. Firm, precise, unyielding. Conceal, don't feel. She builds her own walls with each held breath, stacking careful, invisible bricks between herself and anyone who could be hurt by the frost she cannot fully control. Anna knocks from the other side with a child's knuckles and a young woman's stubbornness. She sings at wood. She jokes at silence. She presses her cheek to cool grain and waits for a latch to lift. When it doesn't, she invents reasons to keep believing anyway. Time does not move the same in a quiet house. It stretches like taffy around empty rooms. Servants learn to step softly. Guards learn the pattern of a lonely princess's footsteps. The city adapts to seasons without festivals. Anna learns corridors the way other children learn maps of rivers. She keeps a constellation of wishes in her pocket. One for a friend, one for a day with both parents and both sisters at the same table, one for a future that doesn't feel like a hallway with a locked door at the end. Elsa learns control as people learn second languages, slowly, with mistakes that sting. She builds snow in her palms and forces it to melt. She draws frost from the window and traces it back until glass glitters clean again. Every success is quiet. Every failure is loud to her own heart. She loves Anna so much, it aches, and that love is the one thing she keeps uncovered. When she hears the footsteps pause outside, her own feet move without her, toward the door and then away, like tides resisting the shore. Then the sea takes the king and queen with an efficiency that feels personal. There is grief in silk and grief in simple bread, grief in the creak of the chair that no one moves because it is still theirs, grief in two very different bedrooms. Anna's sorrow is a burst dam. Elsa's is a freezing river that thickens without sound. In the wake of loss, the palace changes color. Sunlight still lands on the floor, but it looks colder. Everyone speaks more softly without being asked. When love is the only bridge and the bridge is forbidden, hope finds alternate routes. Anna begins to talk to portraits and stray cats, to imagine stories for statues. She plans ridiculous adventures in her head because inside the plans, laughter is allowed. She memorizes the view from every window. She learns the distance from her door to Elsa's by counting steps, the way sailors count knots. Elsa learns the heights of the walls inside her, the exact inch at which breath becomes fog, the angle at which a wrist turns when fear tightens. She thinks of Coronation as a solution and a problem, a single day when the gates must open and the gloves must stay on. She dreams in white and wakes with a start. Sure, she has frosted the pillow. The staff know better than to shake her hand, and the staff love her anyway. They love both sisters differently and exactly the same, as people who carry countries on their shoulders, without being heavy enough yet to be believed when they say it hurts. Childhood is ending, and each sister stands at a different edge of the same cliff. Anna is ready to jump into life with her arms open. Elsa is ready to hold the cliff together with careful fingers. Between them is the door. Beyond the door are the people. And beyond the people is the day the bells will ring. Chapter 2. Coronation Day. The gates swing wide. Morning in Arendelle tastes like apples and sea salt. Harbor ropes creak. Bakeries exhale warm air. Bunting unfurls like freshly washed sky. The bells do not merely ring, they state intention. Today the gates will open, and the world will look into the heart of a house that has taught itself to beat quietly. Anna wakes into a day she has kept folded inside her since childhood. The way sailors keep a final letter in a dry place. She will meet people. She will share jokes with strangers. She will dance until the floor remembers her footsteps. She will, perhaps, fall in love in the way stories insist is possible on festival days. She tucks excitement into every seam of her dress until it rustles when she moves. Elsa wakes into a plan with 100 moving parts and one non-negotiable rule: no accidents. Every item on her table is placed where it cannot startle her. Every corridor she will use has been measured for drafts. She smiles at the mirror in a way that is practice and also not, because she does want this, the responsibility and the chance to serve, the shape of her mother's kindness and her father's steadiness worn like a mantle. She also wants to do no harm. Those wants braid together so tightly that sometimes her breath snags. The city surges through the gates as if freedom has weight. The palace swallows visitors with golden corridors and returns them as laughter. Anna tries every experience like someone offering flavors at a market. She mistakes a bust for a person and apologizes to it. She spins in a courtyard until the sky spins back. She talks to horses the way nobles talk to each other, with bright eyes and the assumption that whatever they say will be worth hearing. She collides with a stranger whose smile is quick and whose compliments are quicker. His name is a handsome shape in her mouth. He seems to understand shortcuts. They invent a version of destiny that fits perfectly into an afternoon. Elsa's coronation is a ceremony that earns its ink in future history books. The doors swing wide. Dignitaries line up with the curiosity of those who have been kept waiting. The organ swells. The crown finds its place like a key in a long, silent lock. She keeps her hand steady, keeps her mind on the present tense, imagines gloves as skin and skin as calm. A small slip, a tremor of fear shivers across her. She catches it. No one sees, or if they do not know what they are seeing. That evening, the halls turn into a music box. Anna steps into the dance and lets it carry her. She is embarrassingly happy and not embarrassed at all. She tells jokes that bloom into laughter before they fully form. She and the charming newcomer duet their way through the palace of possibility, improvising a future with the easy confidence of people who have not yet learned the vocabulary of consequences. By the time they announce an engagement, the moment is so bright, it dazzles even those who have doubts. Elsa's smile is a ribbon pulled too tight. She knows the rules of diplomacy and the rules of safety and the rules of love, and none of them approve of a promise made in a day. She tries to respond as a sister first, but fear wrings her voice dry. The request to bless the union feels like stepping onto black ice. She says no. The word cracks the air. The argument is not mean, but it is hot. Anna's loneliness flares into anger at a door that is never opened. Elsa's terror flares into cold that cannot be willed away. In front of everyone, the room answers her heart. Frost ferns out from the floor, candles shudder, and a gust of winter runs its hand across the walls. The silence afterward is the kind that has edges. Shock becomes whisper. Whisper becomes alarm. Elsa feels the walls she built around herself crumble not into freedom, but into exposure. Scared, she does what scared animals and scared queens sometimes do. She flees, out through festival and flag, through courtyard and gate, into mountains where the only rules are wind and gravity. The fjord takes on a skin of ice under her feet, as if the sea wants to help her run. Behind her, Arendelle inhales summer and exhales winter in a single breath. For Anna, the moment's a second accident, different from the first and the same in all the ways that matter. But she is older now. Grief never taught her to retreat. It taught her to chase what is broken. She entrusts the palace to order and sets out after Elsa with determination, stitched into the hem of her cloak. She does not bring fear as a companion. She brings hope and a capacity for stubborn affection that has always been her second magic. Night falls. Mountain paths turn from scenic to stern. The cold is new, sharper than the snow she remembers from childhood. A cold not just of weather, but of meaning. Anna keeps going because there is no other direction that makes sense. Somewhere ahead, her sister is building a place where no one can be hurt by her again. Somewhere behind, a city is learning the shape of a sudden winter. The story is leaving ballrooms and walking into the kind of silence where answers are found. Chapter 3. The Eternal Winter. A Palace of Solitude. The mountain is a cathedral carved by wind. Snow speaks in small voices, the kind that tell you secrets if you walk long enough without interrupting. Anna's cheeks sting. Her breath turns to little constellations. Her thoughts line up like footfalls. She knows her sister. She knows that fear can look like cruelty when it is only pain in a fancy dress. On the way, the world offers companions. A man who sells ice and is temporarily out of a job. A reindeer who understands more than anyone asks of him. Later, a snowman with a round soul and an unconditional laugh. A piece of childhood given speech. These are not just helpers in a traditional story sense. They are mirrors that show Anna who she is when the room is not asking her to be a princess. She is practical and ridiculous and brave in ways that feel like jokes until they save someone's life. High above the tree line, Elsa chooses design over accident. She stops running and starts building. With each gesture, she translates fear into geometry. Spires grow like crystal thought. Stairs curl upward like music that has decided it will not end. Walls are not just barriers, they are declarations. I will be myself where no one else can be harmed by me. The palace is beautiful the way glaciers are. Honest, uncompromising, utterly itself. Letting go is not a mood, it is a method. Elsa tries it on like a cloak that actually fits. In solitude, her power is a language that makes sense. An alphabet she can finally rearrange into sentences. She confesses nothing. She admits everything. To herself in the way ice admits the shape of the water it once was. The crown is weight she sets down without guilt. The gloves become history. For the first time since childhood, she laughs without immediately looking for a place to hide the echo. Anna arrives at the edge of a miracle with boots full of snow and a smile that believes itself into being. The reunion is awkward at first because love with a long pause develops scar tissue. Anna's words tumble. Elsa's come out precise and measured. The conversation is two rhythms trying to find a tempo. Anna frames the problem as sisters do. Come home, we can fix this together. Elsa hears the danger behind the invitation. Come home and risk hurting them again. She tries to decline without wounding. Fear steers her hand. Ice answers for her. A guardian appears. Marshmallow, an embodiment of the defense Elsa cannot say out loud. The message is not subtle. Go. The snowman is the bouncer at a door Anna will not choose to stop knocking on. The chase leaves scrapes and rips and a kind of laughter that is half relief and half terror. In the chaos, a shard of Elsa's power finds Anna's heart. It is small, almost delicate, the way a single misunderstanding can grow very large if not addressed in time. Down the mountain again, the world changes shape. Snow is no longer a white canvas. It is a clock with a loud tick. Anna grows colder from the inside out, an unfamiliar kind of quiet creeping along her pulse. She insists she is fine because that is her native language. But the people who have chosen to walk with her, the ice harvester with honest eyes, the reindeer who has never lied, the snowman who defines friendship by deed, notice. They carry the worry carefully, like a lantern in wind. In a valley of stones where the earth remembers, trolls circle the problem with the competence of old magic. Their diagnosis is as simple as it is brutal. Only an act of true love can thaw a frozen heart. Anna hears the phrase and translates it into a plan without stopping to consider if the dictionary is out of date. A promise made earlier in the afternoon seems like exactly the right tool for the job. A kiss, a fairy tale solution that lines up with stories she told herself during quiet winters. Back in Arendelle, a man who looked like a solution rearranges his face into the truth. He moves through crisis the way a knife moves through fruit, with purpose and without apology. He calls himself necessary. He borrows authority from the weather and uses it to carve a path toward power. The people are cold. He is warm with ambition. His coat does not look out of place around the shoulders of a kingdom that needs a story to lean on. While Anna leans toward a rescue that seems mathematically correct, Elsa breaks under a different arithmetic, the sum of every fear multiplied by public need. She is captured not because she is weak, but because she is unwilling to use strength in ways that might hurt someone. Shackles do not hold her. Love does, twisted and misread as duty. In the cell, the cold is not weather. It is a verdict she keeps trying to appeal in a court that is not yet open. The storm builds without a sky to hang it on. The fjord groans. Ships tilt in place like thoughts that cannot settle. In the streets, people wrap their dignity tight and share soup in doorways. Arendelle has always been good at surviving winters. It has never encountered one that seems to disapprove of hope. Anna returns with a plan that is elegant because it is simple. Present love to the problem like a key at a lock. She staggers a little, because walking is different when your heart has a literal weight in it. The clock and the storm agree, hurry. In this kind of wind, even truth is hard to hear. She thinks she will be saved by the promise she made before the world introduced itself properly. She does not yet know that love is more complex than the song suggests. Stronger, yes, but also wilder, with roots no map could guess. Chapter 4, A True Act of Love, Thaw. In crisis, people reveal their weather. Some turn into shelters, some turn into flint. Anna arrives, trembling and determined, at a doorway that should hold the end of her suffering. She is met not by warmth, but by arithmetic again, this time the kind that subtracts. The kiss she expects does not arrive. The story she wrote on Coronation night tears clean down the middle. The revelation is cruel at its efficiency. A man who rehearsed charm now steps into honesty. He needed a bride, not love, a crown, not a country of living people, a narrative, not a sisterhood. He leaves Anna to a slow fate because it is convenient, because he believes that weather and words can be made to lie long enough for him to finish his work. He announces a tragedy with the poise of someone who has practiced bad news in a mirror. Olaf, a tiny ambassador from a happier chapter, finds Anna in the room where endings are stacked like blankets. He doesn't understand politics. He understands warmth. He lights a fire. He explains love the way children explain the moon, earnestly, with metaphors that are less wrong than they seem. He reminds Anna that her heart has always chosen in a direction different from bargains, different from convenience. The act of true love that can save her may not be a gift received. It may be a gift given. On the fjord, the world pulls tight. Elsa breaks her prison, not with rage, but with refusal. She will not be the reason anyone freezes. Not by accident. Not again. She runs into a storm that answers only to her, and not even to her completely. The blizzard is not outside her. It is also inside. A feedback loop of fear and power. She calls for Anna without words. The city hears and cannot help. Anna, leaning on a snowman who dreams of summer, staggers out into wind that has taught itself how to roar. She sees two shapes ahead. The sister whose fear has always been love in armor, and the man whose blade glints with the simple logic of conquerors. The choice is not actually choice. She moves toward the person she has been moving toward her whole life. The freeze strikes mid-step. Not dramatic at first, just a stiffening, a slowing. The last action she takes is the most honest version of herself. She throws her body between danger and someone she loves. The sword comes down, meets a statue of devotion, and shatters. Sound returns like air after drowning. Wind loses interest. The blizzard runs out of arguments. Elsa collapses against the figure who once knocked on doors and now knocks against the world itself. The grief is not polite. She has lost everything she worked so hard not to break. Her wail is the kind that requires distance to hear safely. In touching Anna's frozen cheek, she learns a new theorem. Love is not the opposite of fear. Love gives fear a job and tells it to stand guard rather than drive. The thaw begins not with a spell, but with a realization, spoken softly enough to steady both sisters. Love can thaw. Not love as ceremony, not love as a deal struck in gold, but love as daily choosing. The ice cracks along every wrong assumption, every misread intention, every time the door stayed shut because silence felt like safety. The frost lifts from roofs and hair and a heart that has always been too big to calcify forever. Anna breathes. The city breathes after her. Elsa lets go of the version of control that required absence and steps into the version that requires presence. The fjord returns to itself with a relieved shudder. Ships bob like thoughts thinking themselves again. Flowers wake up so quickly, it feels like a magic trick. Marshmallow, left alone, remembers how to be only snow. Olaf looks up and discovers he will not have to choose between existing and summer. Friendship can invent a tiny cloud for him and ask it to follow faithfully. As for the would-be usurper, the sea is not impressed by plans made without listening to wind. His calculations collapse under the weight of a community that has remembered itself. He is sent away with the dignity he does not deserve, because Arendelle is a place that adds rather than subtracts when it can. In the palace, a door opens that should have opened years ago. It does not erase the years in between. It honors them by letting light fall on places that used to be shadows. Elsa sets aside isolation as a governance strategy and picks up connection. She laughs at the ice rink she spins out of thin air in the courtyard, a ring of public joy. She learns that control grows best in the soil of trust. Anna learns that bravery feels different when the world is warm. The sisters do not become perfect, because perfect is a frozen thing. They become fluent in each other. Elsa takes off her gloves, not just from her hands, but from her voice. Anna gives her jokes a job, lifting, bridging, reminding. They practice the daily act of true love in little gestures. Shared cocoa, letters slipped under doors for fun, walks in the crisp night air where silence is an agreement rather than a punishment. The gates remain open, not because a proclamation says so, but because people move through them together and refuse to let them stay closed. At the end of this chapter, winter is not an enemy. It is a season with a calendar. Summer is not a prize. It is a conversation with light. The city is itself. The sisters are themselves. And somewhere north, beyond maps most people own, a quiet voice in the world is beginning to hum, an old call that neither Anna nor Elsa has truly heard yet, but will. For now, the kingdom skate glides on a courtyard rink, laughing in circles that never quite close, because love keeps inventing new routes. Chapter 5. After the thaw, bonds restored. Morning returns to Arendelle like a promise kept. The fjord, freed of its hard mirror, sways with small, contented waves. Roof lines that spent a season under frost breathe out their stored sighs. In the courtyard, laughter folds into circles as blades trace easy loops on a rink that appears when a queen lifts her hand. Not as a shield this time, but as a gift. The gates, once symbols of silence, stand open with the casual certainty of hands held. Elsa learns a new rhythm, present not distant, gentle not guarded. She walks the market streets without the old weight in her shoulders. Children race to demonstrate their newest skating tricks. Vendors present pears, ribbons, and stories in equal measure. When she laughs, no one flinches. When a stray glitter of frost curls from a breath or a wrist, the city treats it the way it treats gulls and bells, part of the weather they love her for. Anna builds a different rhythm, breakfast conversations that wander, afternoon errands that turn into adventures, evening walks that end with both sisters sitting on a palace stair, letting the day cool around them. She is still sunshine being condensed into a person. But now the light lingers instead of chasing what it can't reach. She memorizes the sound of Elsa's untroubled laugh and tucks it away like a gift she will keep unwrapping. Some repairs are visible. Broken eaves reset. Flags rehung. Others are quiet. An apology brewed into tea. A letter slid under a door without ceremony. A pause before speaking that leaves space for the other's courage. Elsa practices showing her hands empty of gloves. Anna practices leaving silences alone when they are thoughtful rather than frightened. Between them grows a small, sturdy reef of daily choices. We will say it now. We will ask. We will answer. We will go for a walk before this becomes a wall. Olaf learns summer as a lifestyle. A tiny, loyal cloud follows him like an affectionate hat, offering shade made of snow. He visits schoolrooms and is immediately hired as teacher of imagination and warmth. He cannot remember every fact he shares, but he remembers to include everyone. Children, who have always known how to be philosophers when adults aren't listening, ask him the best questions. Sven answers many of them with expressive nods. Kristoff, whose heart is calibrated to the mountain and its honest silence, tries to learn the language of palaces without losing the grammar of the hills. He succeeds by being exactly himself. He brings ice down in summer to carve into temporary sculptures that drip their way into memory. He finds that the right words for Anna are the ones that don't hide behind polish. Sometimes he practices them to Sven, who is both generous and a harsh critic when it comes to tone. Arendelle's annual calendar grows new holidays almost by accident. There is First Rink Day, which begins the year with skates and cocoa. There is Lantern Night, which began as a practical lighting of harbor posts and became a ceremony of little lights drifting like stars along the water, each one a thought for someone loved. There is Warm Mittens Day, during which piles of knitwear appear in public baskets with notes that simply say, "Take what you need, leave what you can." Foreign dignitaries come with careful eyes and leave with simpler faces. They expected a queen who controlled winter. They meet a woman who extends it like a hand. The difference is not small. Elsa hosts them in rooms that remain warm without trying to prove anything. When asked for demonstrations, she creates a flake large enough for an ambassador's child to stand inside and see the world through radiant angles. The ambassador takes off his shoes and steps in too. There are missteps because life is the opposite of a straight line. A counselor misreads a pause and pushes too hard. An old habit drifts back like a cold draft and must be sealed again. Elsa still dreams sometimes of glass-hard seas and disappearing steps. And on those mornings, she allows herself to say, "It is a hard day," and no one makes it harder. Anna still overpromises and must arrive at 3 places at once. She learns to send a note that says, "Tomorrow, I'm still your friend." Oh, the city learns to answer with patience and soup. They reopen the old music room. Dust sighs upward in a soft, embarrassed cloud, and the sisters play badly and then better. They remember childhood melodies and pieces and rebuild them with laughter. A footman lingers in the corridor and hums along. Soon half the household knows the tune, which is convenient because it requires humming while working and produces good bread and fewer dropped plates. In private, they practice speaking the sentences that once felt impossible. "When you closed the door, I thought I was the reason your heart hurt. And when I kept the door closed, I thought I was the reason yours would stop." These are not accusations. They are maps with honest legends. They trace the routes together and decide where to build bridges, where to put up signposts that say, "Detour, joy ahead." On the fjord, the winter festival returns as a choice, not a condition. Elsa shapes an ice path out across the water, wide and steady, a ribbon that lets people glide under the stars and find themselves again. Anna organizes an absolutely enormous pot of stew on the quay and declares that anyone who arrives with a spoon is a guest of honor. The entire town suddenly remembers they all own spoons. At the end of that night, after last lanterns, after last cups, after the last child is carried home, after Olaf is persuaded that firewood is not a collectible, the sisters stand at the edge of the water and watch the moon wobble in the waves. "Do you hear it?" Anna asks, meaning the hush. I do, Elsa says, meaning something else. A thinner, older tone that isn't wind, hiding at the edge of hearing like a star behind cloud. They go to bed, one to a room that faces the sea, one to a room that faces the forest. At the windows, the night lays down her quiet. Far to the north, something breathes in. The day has been full of laughter. The future does not mind waiting, but it does not forget to hum. Chapter 6. Little Adventures. Birthdays, traditions, and lights. Sisterhood, once a survival skill, becomes a hobby. They schedule mischief. They invent errands that require both of them. They try to bake without alarming the kitchen. Even the palace mice learn the sound of their shared footsteps and make room. A birthday approaches, and Elsa wants it right for Anna. Not grand, not loud, but precise to the person who once waited outside a locked door and made a party from perseverance. She plans a procession of small joys, each wrapped in the kind of secrecy that is delight rather than distance. A banner smuggled through a stairwell, friends hidden behind curtains that were obviously hiding friends, a cake that could feed a regiment, and somehow will because everyone will absolutely have seconds. There is one flaw, a cold. A queen with a cough is a comedy. No court etiquette book prepared for. Each sneeze births a tiny, cheerful snow being, Snowgies, who immediately unionize into a squeaky, chaotic committee. They love cake. They love everything. They are the living proof that even a queen's mishaps can be adorable and structurally significant. Anna, who has always known how to love a mess into meaning, shepherds Snowgies like a kindergarten teacher with a sense of humor. She tucks them into a tower of their own with a snack schedule and a broom. The birthday remains perfect because perfect is not the absence of accidents. It is the agreement to find joy in their company. Later that night, Elsa pretends to scold her own nose and ends up laughing so hard she scares a passing guard who will tell this story forever. When winter tilts toward holidays, the palace faces a familiar question. What is our tradition? The years of closed gates left gaps. Olaf, whose heart is made of helpfulness, tied with string, decides that the answer is everything. He and Sven set out with baskets and good intentions to borrow and bring back customs from every door they can knock on. He returns with cinnamon, pine boughs, paper stars, and a small avalanche of other people's memories. The collection is too much and exactly enough. In the end, the sisters realized their own tradition was there all along, the unexpected miracle that arrived on the night of an accident and stayed. The first Olaf, top hat slightly crooked, grin as wide as winter. The story becomes their ritual, telling it, adding a new detail each year, remembering how love makes something new and gives it a name that lasts. Between festivals, life keeps writing its elegant, ordinary chapters. Kristoff rehearses important questions, suffers practice speeches that disintegrate in Sven's honest gaze, and learns that the truest proposal sounds like his own voice when he isn't trying to sound like anyone else. Anna teaches him palace shortcuts even she hasn't used yet. He teaches her the exact blue of a dawn you only get above the tree line. They don't finish each other's sentences, they widen them. Elsa experiments. Not in secret, but with a curious mind in a safe room the staff set aside with more enthusiasm than is strictly professional. She learns to sculpt frost, delicate enough to lace a snowdrop and strong enough to cradle a horse. She invents little games for the children, freeze tag, where the tag itself is a joke that melts when someone says, please. A slide that appears for exactly 1 hour in exactly one hallway every Friday. She writes, do not run in the air where only adults can see it, and watches them obey, confused and amused. On clear nights, the sky unwraps green silk, northern lights bending and breathing. Anna and Elsa lie on the palace roof with blankets up to their ears and talk about everything they used to save for later. Lights stream like thoughts given permission. Olaf names each ribbon and forgets each name instantly, which is the point. Kristoff explains how the air tastes different when the lights are strong. Sven patiently chews the corner of a blanket. Letters arrive from villages along the trading routes and from ships that carry both wool and news. Some invite the queen to christen a bridge, others invite both sisters to a naming ceremony or a harvest dance. They say yes as often as they can. They learn the sound of their country from close range and far. Not every day is picturesque. There are leaky roofs under beautiful snow. There are stubborn goats and counselors with old maps in their heads and a pipe in the palace that refuses to behave. But the problems are solvable with hands and patience and the particular energy that two people share when they have chosen the same life. Elsa cheers at a very small plumbing victory with the same joy she gives a treaty. Anna writes a note of thanks to the palace mason that he keeps in his apron for the rest of his working years. And then, threaded through all this domestic light, the humming grows. It is not music exactly, but it knows the road to music. Elsa hears it most clearly in the moments before sleep, when her mind is a field of snow with fox prints on it. It does not frighten her. It does not promise easy things. It stands politely in the doorway of her attention and waits for her to look up. When she tells Anna, Anna does not laugh. "If it's calling you," Anna says, "we will go see where it lives." The words fit. The future straightens its shoulders. Chapter 7. The Call of the Unknown. Into the Mist. The voice arrives like a thread of light pulled through the weave of a quiet night. It does not push. It invites. Elsa sits up in bed, and the room holds its breath with her. The sound is not coming from the palace or the harbor, or the wind in the chimney. It is older and farther and very particularly hers. The days that follow feel like the hour before a storm, bright, expectant, precise. Elsa tries to ignore the call and discovers that she cannot. When she leans into her work, it leans back into her. She freezes a teacup by accident and then unfreezes it without touching it. Children ask for extra ice on everything because it does fun tricks. And she smiles with the kind of smile that means, I am thinking about something else. Anna notices. Anna always notices. A disturbance arrives that is not an opinion. The ground shivers. Candles blow out in a corridor with no windows. The wind makes a new shape and keeps it. Arendelle's fountains pause as if listening. Then, one deep breath later, the elements that keep the kingdom's days in order wake fully. And the city learns that magic can be a reminder as well as a miracle. Flames rise and do not burn. The air runs. The sea lifts its head. Elsa does not mistake this for malice. She hears, "Come." She speaks softly and fast to the captains and counselors. "Evacuate." The plans pour out because, of course, she has them. Quiet pages written on evenings when the word "what if" behaved itself and did not turn into panic. The people move with practiced grace, shepherding each other uphill. No one is left behind because Arendelle has learned the difference between alone and together and chosen the latter. On the ridge above the city, bundles and bread and blankets become a temporary life. Anna walks the line, trading jokes for worry, collecting worry, and turning it into lists of small tasks that yield visible results. Elsa stands at the edge of the fjord and listens hard to what she cannot yet name. When she turns to Anna, the decision's already braided into her voice. "We have to go north," she says. "We," Anna repeats, because a pronoun is a promise. The party forms the way good parties do. Not too large, every member necessary, even the one made of snow. Kristoff packs with mountain logic, which is to say twice as much rope as anyone thinks is reasonable, and exactly the right number of socks. Sven is pleased at being included and tells everyone so with an enthusiasm that demands a carrot toll. Olaf volunteers to keep spirits high and immediately proves himself excellent at it by mispronouncing expedition in a way that cannot be forgotten. They step into a forest wrapped in a mist that behaves like a boundary and like a thought. The air inside is older than the air outside. Time here is not the same kind of obedient. Trees carry memory like tattoos. The group is greeted by people who have been waiting a long time and by soldiers who have been waiting longer. The Northuldra move with the easy competence of those who belong to the land. The Arendellian troop under Lieutenant Matthias moves with the precise kindness of a defense that never intended to harm. Everyone is wary without being cruel. Names are exchanged. So are stories, carefully at first. then less carefully. The language of the forest is braided. Wind gale, giggles and shoves. Fire that scampers in the shape of a salamander. Bruni, earth that walks in giant steps and takes naps like boulders with feelings. Water that rides the line between companion and test. Olaf, who has always been good at making introductions, is adopted by Gale within minutes and spends the afternoon discovering new definitions of we. Elsa learns that her mother's lullaby was a map the whole time, that the river of memory is a place, that the past can be visited if one knows where to wade. She also learns that history, the one written in Arendelle's clean books, and the one held in the Northuldra's careful voices, does not always agree, and that the disagreement is the point. Anna listens with her whole face. The name Runeard appears, and it arrives with a shadow. At night in the camp, firelight makes a circle safe enough for truths. Lieutenant Matthias shares jokes that survive decades because they were shared regularly. Yelena, who speaks for her people with the exact amount of weight her words require, tells the sisters what the forest remembers about a dam and a treaty that was also a trap. The wind tugs at Elsa's hair like a friend trying to pull her toward the door. The door, in this case, is north across a sea that does not promise to be kind. The sisters argue gently, which is to say they try to protect each other by leaning in opposite directions. Anna wants to stay together. Elsa hears the voice and knows it won't be still until she stands where it lives. Their compromise is not elegant, but it is honest. We move together until the decision is at our feet. The decision arrives at the edge of a dark ocean. Its surface like a line of thought someone tried to cross out and couldn't. The water horse, the knock, tests Elsa the way mountains test climbers. It does not wish her harm, it wishes her to be certain. The struggle is beautiful and practical. Elsa remembers that control doesn't always mean tightness. Sometimes it is the willingness to loosen at the right moment. She earns the knock's respect, and it's back. She turns to Anna with eyes full of a new kind of light. I can't bring you where I have to go, she says, and the truth lands between them like a held breath. Anna's heart steps forward anyway. Courage is stubborn. Love is more stubborn still. But she lets Elsa go because that, this time, is the braver act. The sea rises and drops away. The knock carries a queen toward a song and a river of memory. On the shore, Anna, Kristoff, Olaf, and Sven stand in a cluster shaped like a promise kept. The fog rolls and lifts and rolls again. The forest, which has watched empires and seasons and small loves, watches two sisters prove again that distance cannot break what has been chosen. Chapter 8. The truth about Ahtohallan, what the river remembers. North is not just a direction. It is a decision held steady over cold water. Elsa rides the knock as if thought were a road and the road were made of light. The dark sea is named for what it keeps to itself. Waves rise like towers that never learned arrogance, only height. Saul speaks in the back of the throat. Every moment is a calculus of humility and will. A shoreline appears the way answers do, first as rumor, then as rock. Ahtohallan is not a castle and not a cave. It is a memory the world built for itself, storing the past in ice as a library stores the future in paper. The song that called Elsa here stops calling and begins listening. She steps inside. In Ahtohallan, the air is crowded with yesterday. Faces and moments flower from the walls like frost given biography. Elsa moves slowly because the reverence you give a place teaches it how to receive you. Her parents are here in fragments. Iduna's braid caught by wind that is not present. Agnar's steady, worried eyes. A lullaby she knows by heart becomes a map she can walk. She follows its path to the corridor where truth forgets to be polite and chooses to be clear. History rearranges itself under her hands. What she was told about a benevolent dam and a generous treaty dissolves the way breath disappears on a warm day. King Runard's gift was a blade hidden in ribbon. His fear of what he did not understand built a trap and called it progress. When memory shows the moment of treachery, stone and water and a bridge from trust to grief, Elsa's body knows what to do with the knowledge. She grieves, she steadies, and then she chooses. She sees her mother as more than a lullaby, a Northuldran girl who ran toward danger with compassion instead of fear, who sheltered a boy from a storm of arrows, who later loved that boy into a man and then into a father. She sees herself as something other than a mistake to be managed, a bridge the world itself requested, not for spectacle, but for balance. The fifth spirit is not a title, it is a task. It is also a belonging. There is a limit to how much even an honest heart can carry in a single armful. Elsa, intent on reaching deeper truth, pushes past the point where endurance becomes erasure. Cold is not the enemy here. Overreach is. The ice blooms from within, the way exhaustion does when it has practiced for years. She sends what she has learned onward in a rush of memory shaped like a snowflake and falls into stillness that is not sleep. Far away in the forest, Anna feels the lesson first as a loss. Olaf, who has always been a miracle, carefully maintained, begins to go. He narrates his own vanishing with a gentleness that has always been his kind of courage. He tells Anna the very best things he knows, that love is knowing when to hold on and when to let go, that water has memory, that some books are finished and some are continued in different chapters. He thanks her for the story he got to live. She thanks him for the same. He becomes snow in the air, then light, then the kind of quiet that isn't empty. Grief bends the world. Anna, who can usually find the next joke, cannot find her breath. The forest doesn't hurry her. Kristoff does not instruct her to be strong in ways that would make her weaker. He simply takes her hand and makes the word with into shelter. When she can stand again, it is on legs that know things they did not know in the morning. The next right thing is not an anthem. It is a footstep. Anna looks at the map the memories drew and sees the hinge, a dam built on a lie. She understands what must be done and what it will cost. Queenship is not a crown. It is the willingness to pull the correct thread, even when it unravels a comfort you love. She moves the earth giants with a plan as clear as a bell. Lure them to the dam. Let their anger be the hammer that breaks the wrong thing so the right things can breathe. She is frightened in exactly the correct measure. She does it anyway. Stone meets stone. Water remembers it is a river. The roar is a verdict and a hymn. The rush aims itself at Arendelle with the indifference of physics, and Anna's heart breaks a second time. Not for loss alone, but for the idea that truth must always arrive dressed as destruction. But truth sometimes travels with a faster companion. Elsa wakes into the precise second she is needed. The knock is there because she earned it, and because the world loves a good entrance. She cuts across the sea like a drawn line, intercepts the flood at the last possible fraction of a breath, and turns disaster into a bow that stops at the city's toes. The wave kneels. The fjord, which has seen enough drama for many years, accepts this resolution with dignified relief. When sisters find each other again, the hug is a conclusion and a prologue in equal parts. They do not waste the moment deciding who saved whom. They tally the ledger correctly. Elsa answered a call and found a truth. Anna made a choice and made it real. The forest, at last, inhales. The mist that kept time folded around itself lifts and joins the ordinary sky. Gale claps by rearranging leaves. Bruni sits on Elsa's shoulder like a living exclamation mark. The earth giants, who know how to nap theatrically, lie down with the satisfaction of boulders after an honest day's work. They walk the repaired road together to the ridge above Arendelle, where this part of the story began. The city below is itself spared not by luck, but by love doing its job in the right direction. People wave the way people do when they are not just relieved, but changed. Lieutenant Matthias, whose loyalty held its shape through decades of confusion, salutes a future he is pleased to serve. Yelena nods as if she always knew the world could be persuaded to behave correctly if spoken to in the right tone. Decisions remain. Elsa belongs to the forest now, not as an exile, but as a citizen with specific responsibilities. She is the bridge because she understands both shores. Anna belongs to Arendelle the way light belongs to windows. She will be the queen, not because someone puts a crown on her, but because she has been behaving like one for some time. They say these truths out loud and avoid drama where none is required. On the day of Anna's coronation, the bells ring with the note that means we learned, rather than the note that means we won. The gown is beautiful because it is the exact shape of her. The oath is moving because she means every word and because everyone knows she will rewrite it if it means she can mean it more honestly. Kristoff stands nearby with a mix of reverence and "Did I feed Sven?" written across his forehead. Elsa watches from the forest's edge, visible, present, pleased, with a crown that is made of wind and responsibility rather than gold. A new calendar begins and the sisters adjust. Letters go back and forth like birds that remember their way home. Visits are frequent and unceremonious. Sometimes Anna arrives with a basket and a worry that is already halfway solved by the time she sees Elsa. Sometimes Elsa arrives with a gust and a question that Anna answers by walking with her until the answer finds them. The world, which used to ask if the winter would end, now asks better questions. It learns that balance is not a state, but a practice. At night, Ahtohallan hums the way a memory does when it is being well kept. In the city, soft lanterns drift on the fjord, small moons that have earned their glow. In the forest, Gale steals hats with harmless precision. Bruni warms stones for friends who like to sit and talk. The knock waits at the edge of water like a comma ready to carry a sentence forward. And if there is a moral here, it is not that love conquers all. It is that love listens, changes plans, tells the truth, and chooses again. The story of Elsa and Anna is not over. Stories like theirs are made not to end, but to continue in rings, seasons, festivals, quiet breakfasts, letters folded twice, footsteps in snow that does not mind being followed, and in the hush after the last bell. If you stand where the forest begins and the sea refuses to stop, you can hear them both, the song that called and the voices that answered, harmonizing into something that sounds exactly like home. Chapter 9. Anna, the True Queen. The Work of Mourning. Coronations are remembered for gowns and bells, but kingdoms are kept by breakfasts. Anna's begins with porridge, a pencil behind her ear, and a list written in a hand that leans forward like it's eager to help. Outside, the city hums. Inside, the new queen folds gravity into kindness and gets to work. The ceremony itself felt like a page turning itself. The crown settled. The oath moved across the room and took root in 1,000 listening hearts. And for one crystalline moment, the air in Arendelle had the same clarity as new ice. You could see all the way through it to the bottom, where decisions rest. Then the hall emptied. Then life began. Anna rules the way she has always loved, with both hands. Her first law is not a decree, but a habit. The door stays open. She asks to meet the people whose names have lived in ledgers too long without faces. Fishermen with sea-rubbed palms, a baker with the most reliable sourdough in 3 districts, the mason who knows which cornerstones remember storms. She listens. The word spreads like butter on warm bread. The queen is listening. Lieutenant Matthias, whose loyalty was forged in a long watch and tempered by the relief of daylight, becomes the spine of her guard and the rhythm of her mornings. He appreciates that her questions are pointed without cutting, that she understands a harbor's mood by smell alone, that she can tell when a treaty draft has been sneaking extra adjectives into itself. The council, at first cautious, learns to appreciate that when Anna laughs in a meeting, it is a structural improvement, not a loss of seriousness. She keeps a bowl on the council table labeled "Bad Ideas, No Shame." It fills quickly. The second bowl is labeled "Wild Ideas, Maybe." That one fills faster. Under Anna, the business of a city becomes an honest conversation about taxes and roofs, about education, and the correct number of lanterns on a quay where fog likes to get clever, about opening a small schoolroom in the palace so children can learn their letters near the shelves where maps and histories are stored, about sending a teacher to the Northuldra camp to exchange stories in both directions. The first winter festival of her reign looks suspiciously like a neighborhood party that simply got too big to fit indoors. Skates on the fjord, stew by the ladle, a lantern procession that winds like a gentle serpent, through streets the sisters once learned by weather and wish alone. Elsa arrives with the forest air in her hair and turns a sliver of water into a bridge so smooth you can hear laughter gliding across it. People cheer the way they do when their lives feel like they're in a good story that remembers to include them. Policy does not taste like paper here. The Forest Fjord Accord is signed with a ceremony that feels like a reunion rather than a negotiation. Yelena brings a staff that has watched many winters and speaks with the kind of precision that keeps friends honest. Anna brings a map she has been doodling on for months. Paths marked in different colors, trade routes drawn as threads, camping symbols where she intends to build shelters for travelers who speak either language and belong to both homes. Elsa, standing between, nods when both sides nod and corrects only when the world itself requires a footnote. Anna's laws tend to be both practical and poetic. She establishes a harbor care fund to mend nets and replace ropes because a city that eats should never forget the hands that feed it. She eliminates gate fees for market days because open gates should be a value, not a slogan. She creates a common table day when long trestles appear in the square and everyone is assigned to different seats by the luck of a ribbon draw. Dignitaries end up beside dockhands and both leave more fluent in each other's weather. Her mistakes are honest and she says so before anyone has to. The first time she approves a new warehouse with a roof pitch too shallow for the way Arendelle snow slides, she climbs up with the builders, laughs at herself as loudly as anyone, and signs the amended plans in mittened hands. The day the council's proposal for standardized cloak lengths tries to breeze past her, conceived by a committee that has never been cold for long, she tips her chair back, looks at the ceiling for 2 heartbeats, and declares a Cloak Freedom Day instead. The proclamation is framed and hung beside the door where everyone can smile at it on the way out. Kristoff proposes exactly the way he lives, without pomp, with a mixture of determination and shy panic, and with Sven's unhelpful commentary in the background. After 3 false starts and 1 magnificent near disaster involving a bouquet and the bakery's cat, he finds Anna on the palace stair at dusk. He says, "I want the rest of my hauling to be our hauling." She hears every day, every storm, every stew, every silence. She says yes before he can attempt the speech he has practiced into nonsense. They marry in a ceremony that looks like Arendelle and smells like pine. The vows are short and ring true because they have been rehearsing them out loud for months without realizing. Elsa's gift is a canopy of frost lace that hangs between trees in the courtyard and turns every breath into a soft, visible vow. Olaf officiates unofficially and cries a lot. Sven eats only a little ribbon. In the ledger of a queen's days, crises will always request a line. A merchant ship founders on an offshore rock. Anna mobilizes without drama. Harbor ropes whip into motion. Spare blankets multiply. A banner is run up that signals "come here" to every eye on the water. A year's harvest of apples turns sour because an unexpected warm wind confused the orchards. She opens the palace stores and buys every cider, pie, and chutney anyone can make, then ships them along the trade routes free. She does not make speeches about generosity. She makes schedules. Letters between sisters remain a lifeline that does not require the excuse of distance. Sometimes the messenger hawk arrives 3 times in a day because Anna remembered a joke she forgot to write down at breakfast. Sometimes a letter is only a single line. Would you rather fight 1 earth giant-sized duck or 100 duck-sized earth giants? And the answer is discussed by both sides of the forest until it becomes a local legend. Sometimes the pages are heavy with the kind of thinking that bends the neck. Does a river that remembers wrong things want to correct them, or only to hold them safely so they cannot wound again? Night in the Queen's chambers has a new ritual. Anna sets the crown on its hook by the door, not on a pillow. She keeps a pair of boots ready by the bed, and a small basket of rolls for whoever might knock after hours with a worry that can be solved better with bread than with policy. She reads until her eyes disagree. When she blows out the candle, she says, "Thank you." Not to a god, exactly, but to whatever keeps people choosing each other when it would be easier to retreat. On the anniversary of her coronation, the city wakes to find ribbons tied around every door handle. Green for forest, blue for fjord, white for the snow that never stopped being a kind of friend. She did not order this. She cries anyway, the good kind that washes a year clean. When she looks up, she finds the people looking back the way you look at someone whose laugh has taught you to breathe easier. The bells ring. The day begins again. Chapter 10. The meaning of the fifth spirit, keeper of the between. The Enchanted Forest does not need a queen. It needs a listener. Elsa learns the difference, the way people learn to see constellations. Someone points, the pattern becomes inevitable, and then you wonder how you ever looked up and saw nothing but dots. Her mornings begin without clocks. Gale wakes her by rearranging her hair into theories. Bruni curls warm against her shoulder until the exact second he remembers he is fire and zips away to check the moss for news. The knock waits in the water with the patience of a creature that understands time better than calendars do. The earth giants, who are shy about feelings but not about volume, rumble their contentment from the other side of a ravine and occasionally practice tossing boulders into configurations that look like enormous, thoughtful chairs. Elsa keeps a journal in ice, not carved words that would vanish in the first sun, but tiny sculptures in a grove she calls her study. A miniature tree for a day when Gale brought her one perfect leaf from the highest branch. A bead of clear frozen water to mark the day she followed a salmon upstream and learned the bend of its will. A lattice the size of her palm to remember a conversation with Yelena about how much kindness a boundary can hold before it stops being a boundary and becomes an invitation. The grove becomes a language of its own, and the forest reads it with pleasure. Being the fifth spirit is not power in the way stories often measure it. It is stewardship. Elsa mediates, not disputes exactly, but misunderstandings between elements that speak different speeds. Fire is quick and sometimes thoughtless. Earth thinks in seasons and then remembers to move all at once. Wind never holds still long enough to be certain it agreed, and water remembers everything but refuses to summarize. People are the same, though their elements are tea and song and worry. Elsa translates. A Northuldran child with a stare as direct as a sunbeam asks if she is a queen of the snow. No, Elsa answers, delighted by the precise correction. I am a friend of the snow. It lets me make suggestions. The child considers this and responds, so you are its good neighbor. Elsa adds a tiny house to her study that evening, smoke spiraling upward like a question without an answer that needs one. She and Yelena walk the forest's old paths and inventory what grief changed. A circle of stones that once marked a wedding is moved back from a new stream bank. A footbridge is repaired with no nails and much patience. Elsa practices the art of not fixing too much. Sometimes the fifth spirit's job is to keep someone company while a hurt speaks itself into a shape that can be carried. Sometimes the job is to look at the sky for a long time and say, we can wait this out together. Ahtohallan, which could be a destination, becomes a colleague. Elsa visits like you visit a difficult friend who also happens to be brilliant. She goes with questions, not demands. She learns quickly that the river of memory will not be hurried and will not reward spectacle. Some days it offers a scene that seems trivial. A childhood market day when Iduna bartered gently for apples, or a moment when little Anna hid under a table to surprise the cat and fell asleep instead. Those days teach Elsa as much as the days that show crowns and dams and decisions. Memory is not a courthouse, it is a home. You dust it, you sit with it. You do not rearrange its furniture unless it asks. When the forest and the fjord decide to move a herd of reindeer to new winter browsing, Elsa consults the knock about safe river crossings, asks Gale to scout for hidden hollows that collect snow in ways even reindeer dislike, and invites Matthias to bring 3 of Arendelle's best rope minds to teach knots that remember their tasks in storms. She does not lead the herd. She walks beside it, talking to one very old dear about the taste of lichen and concluding that all good plans include snacks. Letters fly like birds. Anna writes about ledgers, about a counselor's terrible pun that she refuses to laugh at publicly but snorts over in ink, about a child who has begun placing fresh flowers on the palace steps every third day because the stone likes to have something to look at. Elsa writes about Gale's attempt to steal a hat that belonged to an earth giant, ill-advised, about the first time Bruni agreed to sleep in her pocket during a thunderstorm, about a new method for making ice ladders that dissolve safely after exactly 10 minutes. They end each letter with the date and the weather, and sometimes with a single line that acts like a bridge in a different sense. I dreamed you were laughing in the library again. Once a season, Elsa rides the Noke to the mouth of the fjord and trims the winter with her hands, shaping the sea ice so boats can move but seals can rest. Fishers wave with knives in their hands. She waves back with frost on her fingers. The work looks like magic and feels like competence. She is gloriously tired afterward in a way that makes soup taste like a prize. Not every day is a painting of balance. There is a quarrel between two gusts of wind that has to be settled by making them chase each other in a loop till they collapse in giggles. There's a patch of marsh that freezes too eagerly, endangering a flock of birds that only ever intended to argue about twig placement. Elsa spends an afternoon kneeling in mud and humming to the ice like it's a beehive that needs calming. There is a moment when the memory of Runaird's face in Ahtohallan tries to make itself a current in the present. She names it aloud, and naming takes its teeth. The Northuldra teach Elsa a game older than the gates, played with stones and silence. You move a piece only after you can describe the wind at that exact moment with your eyes closed. She is bad at it for weeks, and then better, which is to say, she learns to notice the exact differences between breeze, breath, and beginning. When she wins her first game, she gives the victory away. It felt like borrowing anyway, and the other player needed to smile. Sometimes she misses heat, not warmth. She has that in plenty, but heat of the kind you get in a crowded kitchen where soup argues with bread about which is more necessary. She visits on market days, stands in the palace doorway with a hood back and cheeks flushed, and watches her sister be queen for an hour. They do not always have time to speak. They do not always need to. The look they share as Elsa steps back into the forest is not goodbye. It is see you at the next bend. The meaning of bridge deepens. It is not a structure you cross and forget. It is a practice you return to. Elsa knows now that she is not a wall between two worlds. She is a conversation performed daily. When small hands reach for hers at the edge of the forest and ask, "Can you make a snowflake in my mitten?" she does. When a grandmother rests her palm on Elsa's cheek and says, "You look like someone I knew once," Elsa nods because she does. She looks like a woman not afraid to keep learning the shape of her own task. At night, when the aurora holds still long enough to be a curtain rather than a river, Elsa lies on her back and lets her breath make a little weather of its own. Above her, the sky agrees that meaning is made, not found. Beside her, Gale steals the end of her scarf and fails at mischief because laughter gives him away. In her chest, the quiet that used to be fear is now a room with windows open. The forest sleeps. The fjord sleeps. The fifth spirit keeps watch, which in the end means she sleeps too, and trusts the world to wake her if it needs help. Chapter 11, Hidden Chapters, Books, Songs, and Small Sorceries. Every legend has footnotes worth lingering over, the moments too tender for fanfare, the oddities that make the map feel lived in. Elsa and Anna's lives are stitched with these small chapters. Some are told as stories at bedtime. Some are written down where ink dries patiently. Some feel like winks from the world itself. There is the afternoon between creation and companionship when Olaf, still only a bright idea shaped like a friend, stumbled through the woods, learning vocabulary on the fly. He discovered that noses could be borrowed and that names could be chosen. He decided on both with a confidence that history respects. He arrived in a story that already loved him, which is why he still talks like every day is a good day to begin. There is the birthday that nearly dissolved into sneezes and joy. Elsa's cold was an uninvited guest who nevertheless brought presents. Snow geese, tiny snowlings with the metabolism of hummingbirds and the ethics of party confetti. They washed through the day like a soft riot, proliferating until even the palace cat regarded them as a climate rather than a population. Anna tucked them into corners of the castle where mischief could do no harm, and the snow geese retaliated by inventing a game called Roll Down the Stairs Until Someone Laughs. The stair won. Everyone laughed. There is a winter's eve when traditions were short in stock. Gates closed for years will do that. They keep warmth in and rituals out. Olaf, who thinks borrow and share wear the same sweater, set off with Sven to collect customs, knocking on doors with a basket that grew fuller and less coherent by the street. He returned with pine boughs, paper stars, a pastry someone swore must be eaten while making a wish, and a candle you're not supposed to blow out but to talk to. In the attempt to assemble a holiday from other people's treasures, the sisters remembered their own. The first Olaf, conjured out of love and a need for a friend on a night honesty arrived wearing winter. They set a snowman at the center of the table and declared that their tradition would be to tell the truth about the things that made them. There is a night of northern lights so bright, children thought morning had misread the schedule. Under the green silk of sky, Kristoff tried a speech at Anna about, from now on, got tangled in the middle, and took a knee anyway. She said yes with her whole face. Sven tried to play Here Comes the Bride on a piece of driftwood and invented Here Comes the Splinter instead. The family applauded with appropriate gravitas. There are these stories in books that sit slightly to the side of royal shelves. In one, young Anna, impatient with rules and as brave as only the lonely can be, wandered into trouble that looked like a solution and had to be untangled by sisterhood and wit. In another, Iduna and Agnar moved through their pre-royal days with the kind of quiet courage that never makes epics and always makes homes. These tales travel farther than court announcements. They end up in cottage kitchens and on ship decks, read aloud by people whose hands know rope and flour as well as pages. There is a story told by the forest itself in a hush of leaves about the old spirits, how fire learned mischief from people and kindness from salamanders, how wind learned laughter by visiting tents at night and making flaps misbehave, how earth learned to dance only when it understood that stomping could also be joy. Children in the glade listen with heads tilted, then run out to practice being wind and earth and fire without singeing anything important. The knock watches from the river and allows a splash where it will do the least mischief to dignified boots. There is intermission music, a Broadway of their lives that played in a theater far from fjords, where a girl who had once whispered conceal, don't feel sang instead of living, as if emotion were a debtor she could never pay. In that telling, songs named Monster and True Love argued beautifully about who gets to define those words. People wiped tears in velvet seats and left the building unsure whether they had seen themselves or their daughters more clearly. It barely matters. Clarity moved through them anyway. There are drawings in pencil made by a baker's son of the queen on market day with flour on her cheek, and by a sailor of the fifth spirit bending low to listen to a child explain why the river's edge should have bigger stones because my boots are small. These hang on walls where no one expects portraits to hang. They teach royalty the same lesson. Royalty often tries to teach itself with greater expense. You are at your best when being ordinary is not beneath you. There is a story in ice told to visitors at a distance. The VR of a hearth fire, a myth that lays out the spirits as if they were playing cards dealt by an ancient hand, reminding listeners that balance is not decor, it is structure. Children who hear it sleep better afterward, not because the world became simpler, but because it revealed its pattern kindly. There are the little dispatches, comedic, bright, and brief, that Olaf sent the world when the world needed laughter delivered to doorsteps. He rearranged a snowflake into a joke and left it on windowsills. He pretended to be things he obviously was not, a hat, a chandelier, a fainting couch, and in failing reminded everyone that sincerity defeats perfection at every contest worth entering. There is a road that runs along the ridge above the fjord where sisters walk without needing to talk about work. One week they compare notes on a stubborn pipe in the palace and a stubborn beaver in the forest, conclude that both require patience and snacks, and laugh at the correctness of this. Another week they carry silence like a shared shawl, letting it warm. Gale occasionally snatches the shawl and fails to vanish with it because giggling is loud. There are annual games. The Forest Fjord Fair features Guess That Footprint, Name That Wind, and Tie That Knot with Your Eyes Closed. Winners get humble ribbons and an absurd amount of admiration. The Earth Giants compete only unofficially by seeing who can nap the longest in the noisiest place, which is sometimes the square at midday, and they win if anything tries to move them and fails. There are letters folded into tiny boats and floated on the fjord by people who want to tell the future something sweet. They do not ask for wishes there. They leave advice, because perhaps the future reads, mind the steps after rain, keep extra mittens near the door, forgive quickly, but don't forget the lesson's shape. Let children teach you when you've forgotten how. These small sorceries are not plot points. They are bone. They are the architecture that holds up the bright arcs, coronations, rescues, treaties. And if you ask the people who live inside the story which parts they hold when the night is long, they will point to the footnotes without shame. They will say, the queen with flower on her cheek, the fifth spirit lying in moss, listening to birds argue, the snowman knocking with a basket, asking if you have a tradition you can spare. They will say, those are the pieces that made us. Chapter 12. What comes next? Doors we haven't opened yet. Stories like this do not end. They learn to breathe at a calmer pace. The map now is made of possibilities, and the sisters prefer it that way. If you spread the parchment on the council table and anchor it with mugs of tea, you can see paths growing. Anna's Arendelle will keep learning how to be both old and new without tearing. She has begun work on a harbor archive, not dusty but alive, where fishers can log currents, capstans, and gull behavior with the same seriousness as treaties. Patterns whispered by years will surface and make the sea a kinder colleague. She wants scholarships for shipbuilders' children who draw designs on every scrap of paper in the house. She plans a 6 lanterns law, requiring the keys to stay lit even on good nights, because safety isn't a mood, it's a habit. Trade will stretch like a cat in sun. Northern textiles trimmed in forest dyes will glow on market days. Arendellian carpentry will learn to flex from trees that grew where wind taught them to bend. Stories will export, too. Lullabies that cross the mist and come back braided differently. Jokes that absolutely refuse to die. Recipes that prove cinnamon understands diplomacy. Anna will make treaties that look suspiciously like friendships. She will write one with a neighbor across the water who once tried to bluff and found her unbluffable. They will share a laugh years later and pen a pact that lasts because it doesn't pretend to be grander than it is. We promise to speak first, to share storms, to lend spare anchors. She'll draft agreements that assume problems will come and solve them in the first paragraph. She will be unglamorous in the exact right places. Home will deepen its meaning. Marriage will grow them into simpler versions of themselves. Braver because the everyday has become more honest. There may be a small person laughing in the halls, or perhaps more than one, each with very clear opinions about boots and broccoli, each taught to bow, not to status, but to courage. Their bedtime will sometimes be chaos. Sometimes it will be silence so sweet you want to bottle it and pour it on hard days. The council will change shape as the city does. Younger faces will bring new nouns. Older ones will insist on verbs that have weathered storms. Anna will ask more questions than answers, a trait that feels like humility but is actually strategy. She will make room for disagreement that loves the kingdom, and she will be allergic to the kind that loves only its own reflection. Elsa's forest will complicate in good ways. The spirits may introduce cousins, Perhaps a quiet fog that collects secrets and releases them as dew when it is safe. Perhaps a trickster frost that paints riddles on river stones and sulks if no one solves them by noon. She will learn their names the way she learns bird calls, slowly, then suddenly. The knock will reveal older routes under the sea, paths that gleam like old promises kept by deep water. Together they may ride one to a place where the aurora dips so low it seems to want to be touched. Ahtohallan will continue to teach the ethics of remembering. It may offer a lesson that feels like a dare, an echo of a voice whose choices harmed many, asking to be seen as human. Elsa will navigate that with the care of someone who knows forgiveness is not forgetfulness, and that understanding is not absolution. She will encourage the river to keep the past intact while allowing the present to put up signposts. Here lies a mistake. Here is what it cost. Here is why we will do different. There might be a year when the fjord tests the city with ice blown in from a storm that forgot itself. Anna will coordinate with the fifth spirit, not like a queen to a magician, but like a mayor to an engineer. What thickness? What cut? What schedule? They will comb the edge with poles and laughter and caution. People will remember that competence is a kind of love. There could be a summer when drought makes the forest song go hoarse. Elsa will speak to clouds and coaxes them into the kind of rain that does not drown. Anna will adjust market prices and send water casks up old bridle trails. They will both stand in a clearing one evening and tilt their heads back to let the first drops find their faces. Bruni will celebrate by steaming dramatically. Gale will pretend to be shy and fail. The sisters will create a thing with no name yet. That is neither alliance nor annexation. A weaving of forest and fjord, so no argument can tear one without the other objecting loudly. Children will grow up speaking both vocabularies. Knot and ember, tide and grove. Festivals will rotate. 1 year more spruce sap on hands, the next more salt in hair. But every year the same lanterns will be lit, because light refuses to pick sides when it can simply be generous. Elsa may teach a little, quietly outside in a circle, appointing seasons as the syllabus. First lesson, make a snowflake melt in your palm without feeling like you have done something wrong. Second, hear wind without assuming it speaks to you alone. Third, how to apologize to a river. Her students will be children and elders and anyone who suspects that awe is a muscle worth keeping in shape. The world beyond their map might knock. Distant kingdoms could ask for counsel about their own old forests that feel restless in the bones of the land. Some may arrive with humility, some with glittering assumptions. Anna will brew tea and put the glitter where it belongs, on paper stars for a festival, and leave the assumptions at the door. Elsa will show them how to listen until the ground tells you what it wants, not what your plans intend. Sorrow will visit again, because that is the arrangement. It may come on small feet, or as a long sigh, or in the shape of a farewell that was not on the calendar. When it does, the sisters will treat it the way they treat weather. Name it, make soup, invite trusted friends, give it time. They will not mistake a hard week for a broken world. They have learned better. Joy will continue to show off. It will arrive disguised as an extra roll baked by mistake, as a fish that jumps at exactly the wrong moment and makes a child shriek laugh, as a hat Gale steals and returns with a leaf tucked into the band like an apology. It will be the laugh carried down a stairwell where two sisters once walked alone and now never do. And somewhere in a future that is none of our business to schedule, a voice might call again, not because something is wrong, but because stories with magic like to check in. If it does, Elsa will stand, stretch, and smile like someone who keeps a bag packed with mittens and questions. Anna will check the pantry and sharpen a pencil. They will set out, not to flee, not to conquer, but to greet. If you need an ending, take this one. Doors that once stayed closed now swing on well-oiled hinges and are propped open with baskets of apples. If you need a blessing, take this. May your winters be honest and your summers kind. May your bridges be verbs. May your memory keep its edge without cutting you. And if you need to sleep, Here's the final picture. Two windows lit in the same night, one facing forest, one facing sea. Two shadows moving within, pausing at the sill as if to wave, then dimming into the sort of darkness that knows it is loved.